Hi everyone, this is Chain Guru. Welcome back. Today, we're exploring a vital area of supply chain management, procurement and supplier relationship management. While procurement might seem like a simple task, buying what a company needs, it's actually a complex, strategic function that shapes costs, supply continuity, quality, and innovation. Effective procurement isn't just about the lowest price. It's about securing value through planning, supplier research, risk management, and negotiation, all aligned with business goals. In today's global economy, procurement also drives sustainability, ethics, and resilience. Strong supplier relationships, built on trust and transparency, can unlock long-term competitive advantages. This lecture will show how top companies strategically manage procurement to create value beyond cost savings. Today's session is structured into 5 key segments to give you a solid understanding of procurement and supplier relationship management. We'll start with procurement processes and policies, covering the standard steps and internal guidelines companies use to ensure efficiency, compliance, and ethical sourcing. Next is supplier selection and evaluation, where we'll examine how companies choose and monitor suppliers beyond just price. The third segment focuses on strategic sourcing, a data-driven approach to managing costs, reducing risks, and driving innovation. In supplier collaboration and partnerships, we'll explore how companies build strategic alliances that go beyond transactional relationships. Finally, we'll cover contract management and negotiation basics, highlighting key elements of supplier agreements and effective negotiation. Throughout, I'll share real-world examples from top companies like Apple, Amazon, Toyota, and Unilever to show these principles in action. Let's start with a clear definition and the scope of what we mean by procurement. Procurement refers to the process of finding, acquiring, and buying goods, services, or works from an external source. But it's more than just placing an order or signing a check. It's a structured, end-to-end process that begins the moment a need is identified within the organization. This process includes several key steps. First, identifying what exactly is needed, whether it's raw materials, IT services, or office equipment. Then, specifying those requirements clearly so potential suppliers know exactly what's expected. After that comes selecting the right supplier, an important decision that can impact quality, cost, and risk. Once a supplier is chosen, the next step is negotiating terms and signing a contract that defines responsibilities, deadlines, and deliverables. Finally, the procurement process wraps up with the actual ordering, receipt of goods or services, and payment, along with proper documentation and record-keeping throughout. So, as you can see, procurement is a comprehensive process that touches multiple parts of the business and plays a central role in ensuring operations run smoothly and strategically. Now, let's walk through the typical steps involved in the procurement process. Understanding these steps will help you see how structured and deliberate procurement needs to be in order to be effective. Step 1 is needs identification. This is when an internal department, say manufacturing, marketing, or IT, recognizes that it requires a product or service. That's the trigger that kicks off the entire procurement process. Step 2 is specification development. Once the need is clear, the next task is to define the requirements in detail. What exactly are we buying? What standards, volumes, or technical features are required? Clear specifications prevent misunderstandings and ensure suppliers deliver what's truly needed. Step 3 is supplier search and selection. At this stage, procurement looks for potential suppliers who can meet the requirements. This might involve reviewing existing vendor databases or scouting new ones. Step 4 is the request for proposal or quotation, RFP or RFQ. This is where suppliers are formally invited to submit their offers based on the defined specifications. Step 5 is evaluation and selection. Procurement teams evaluate all the proposals received, comparing them on cost, quality, reliability, and other relevant factors to determine the best fit. Step 6 is negotiation and contract award. Here, the chosen supplier and the procurement team negotiate terms, such as price, delivery timelines, warranties, and payment conditions, before signing the final contract. Step 7 is purchase order issuance. The buyer formally issues a purchase order, which acts as the official request and agreement for the supplier to deliver the goods or services. Step 8 is delivery and receipt of goods. This is when the supplier delivers the product or service, and the buyer confirms everything meets expectations and specifications. And finally, step 9 is payment and record maintenance. Once the goods or services are received and verified, payment is processed, and all records are maintained for audit, compliance, and future reference. Each of these steps plays a critical role in ensuring procurement is not just fast and cost-effective, but also transparent, compliant, and aligned with business goals. Now that we've covered the process, let's talk about procurement policies, the internal rules and guidelines that shape how procurement is carried out within an organization. These policies serve a critical purpose. They ensure that procurement activities are not only efficient and consistent, but also compliant with legal and ethical standards. In other words, they help organizations buy the right things, from the right sources, in the right way. There are a few key areas where these policies usually come into play. First, we have spend authorization. This means clearly defining who in the organization has the authority to approve purchases, and up to what amount. It helps control cost and prevents unauthorized spending. Next is vendor eligibility. This refers to the criteria that suppliers must meet to do business with the company, such as financial stability, certifications, or past performance. It ensures that only qualified and reliable vendors are considered. Then there are ethical standards. These policies promote integrity in the procurement process by requiring fair competition, transparency, and avoidance of conflicts of interest. And finally, sustainability requirements. Increasingly, companies are holding suppliers accountable for their environmental and social practices. That means favoring vendors who demonstrate responsible sourcing, low carbon footprints, and fair labor practices. Together, these procurement policies act as the foundation for a responsible, strategic, and forward-thinking procurement function. Let's look at a real-world example. Apple Inc., a leader in using procurement to uphold corporate values and drive global impact. Apple's Supplier Code of Conduct sets rigorous standards for ethical sourcing, labor practices, and environmental sustainability. This isn't just a formality. Apple conducts regular audits of its supply chain, particularly in regions with weaker labor laws. If violations like unsafe conditions or underage labor are found, suppliers must act immediately, or Apple will end the relationship. On the environmental side, Apple emphasizes sustainable materials, carbon footprint reduction, and waste minimization. Suppliers are held to high standards in energy efficiency and resource use. Apple's procurement policies go beyond cost and delivery. They reflect the company's values and protect its reputation, showing how procurement can drive both operational and global impact. Now let's move on to a crucial part of procurement, supplier selection. Choosing the right supplier is not a one-size-fits-all decision. It's a strategic choice that can significantly impact cost, efficiency, product quality, and even your brand reputation. There are several key criteria companies use when evaluating potential suppliers. Let's go through them one by one. First, of course, is cost. While cost is important, it's not just about going with the cheapest option. It's about understanding the total cost of ownership, which includes not just the purchase price, but also things like shipping, handling, customs, and after-sales service. Next is quality. A supplier must be able to consistently meet your quality standards. Poor quality not only affects your end product, but it can also damage your relationship with customers. Delivery is another critical factor. Can the supplier deliver on time, consistently? Delays in procurement often mean delays in production, and that affects the entire supply chain. Then we look at capacity. Does the supplier have the ability to scale production as your needs grow? This is especially important for companies experiencing rapid expansion. Technology is another major consideration. Does the supplier use modern tools and techniques? Are they capable of innovation? This can be a game changer for companies in tech-driven industries. Finance refers to the financial stability of the supplier. You want to work with partners who are solvent and reliable, not those at risk of going under. Location also matters. Proximity can reduce shipping costs and lead times, while suppliers in certain regions may pose geopolitical or logistical risks. And finally, we have culture. This refers to how well the supplier's values and working style align with your organization. Communication, transparency, and shared expectations all play into a successful partnership. Selecting the right supplier is about balance, evaluating these criteria carefully to make informed, strategic choices that support both operational goals and long-term strategy. Once we've identified our supplier selection criteria, the next step is to use the right tools to evaluate potential suppliers in a structured and objective way. Let's look at some of the most commonly used evaluation tools in procurement. First, we have weighted scoring models. This is a method where each selection criterion, like cost, quality, or delivery, is assigned a weight based on its importance. Suppliers are then scored against each criterion, and a total score is calculated. This helps ensure that the decision is not based on gut feeling, but on data and priorities that are aligned with business needs. Next are supplier audits and assessments. These are often done on site, and they allow companies to verify that a supplier's operations meet required standards, whether that's related to quality, safety, labor practices, or environmental impact. Audits help reveal risks and strengths that might not be obvious from a proposal or phone call. Then we have the Request for Information, or RFI. This is typically used early in the selection process. It's a way to gather basic information about a supplier's capabilities, background, and fit before moving on to more detailed evaluations. Think of it as a screening tool. And finally, we use supplier scorecards. These are ongoing tools used to measure supplier performance over time. They track key metrics, like on-time delivery, defect rates, and responsiveness, and provide a clear picture of how well a supplier is meeting expectations. Using these tools ensures that supplier decisions are not only strategic, but also transparent, consistent, and justifiable. Selecting the right supplier is just the start. Performance monitoring is where the real work begins. Once the contract is signed, it's crucial to ensure the supplier delivers on their promises, and this is where key performance indicators, KPIs, come in. On-time delivery is a critical KPI. Late deliveries disrupt supply chains and harm customer satisfaction. Defect rates measure quality, with lower defects leading to fewer returns and better reliability. Responsiveness tracks how quickly suppliers address issues or adapt to changes, helping businesses stay agile. Lastly, cost savings contributions show how suppliers add value beyond price, like process improvements or innovation. By tracking these KPIs, organizations can improve accountability, strengthen relationships, and optimize procurement performance. Let's take a closer look at one of the most respected and studied procurement systems in the world, Toyota's Supplier Evaluation Process, which is a core part of the renowned Toyota Production System, or TPS. Toyota doesn't treat procurement as just a transactional function. Instead, it views suppliers as strategic partners, integral to the company's ability to maintain high-quality, lean operations, and continuous improvement. The supplier evaluation system Toyota uses is highly rigorous and deeply embedded in its broader philosophy of long-term collaboration. Suppliers are evaluated continuously, not just during onboarding. Toyota monitors them against 4 core pillars: quality, cost, delivery, and innovation. Quality is paramount. A single defective part can impact vehicle safety and brand reputation. Toyota expects near-zero defect levels and works closely with suppliers to achieve that. Cost is monitored from a total value perspective. Toyota doesn't simply chase the lowest bid. Instead, it looks for suppliers who can contribute to long-term cost efficiencies through process improvements and lean manufacturing techniques. Delivery is about precision and consistency. With just-in-time manufacturing at the heart of TPS, suppliers must deliver components exactly when they're needed, no earlier, no later. And finally, innovation. Toyota encourages suppliers to contribute ideas that improve products, processes, or sustainability. They see suppliers as an extension of their own R&D capabilities. Because of this deep partnership model, Toyota often maintains decade-long relationships with key suppliers, investing in their development and sharing mutual gains. It's a model built not just on performance, but on trust, transparency, and shared success. Let's now turn our attention to a more advanced and strategic aspect of procurement: strategic sourcing. So what exactly is strategic sourcing? In simple terms, it's a systematic, ongoing process that organizations use to reevaluate and continuously improve their purchasing decisions and supplier relationships. Unlike traditional purchasing, which focuses primarily on price and short-term transactions, strategic sourcing is about aligning procurement with long-term business goals. Now, let's break down the key elements that make up this powerful approach. The first is spend analysis. This involves looking closely at what the organization is spending, with whom, and for what purpose. It helps identify patterns, redundancies, and opportunities for consolidation or negotiation. Next, we have market research. Understanding the supply market, knowing who the key players are, current pricing trends, innovations, and risks, enables informed decision-making. Then comes total cost of ownership, or TCO. This goes beyond the sticker price and considers all the costs associated with a purchase over its entire lifecycle, things like shipping, maintenance, downtime, and disposal. Another pillar is supplier relationship management, or SRM. This focuses on building long-term, collaborative relationships with key suppliers to drive mutual value, not just minimize costs. Risk management is also critical. Strategic sourcing helps companies identify and prepare for supply chain risks, whether they're geopolitical, environmental, or financial. And finally, there's sustainability and ethics. Today's sourcing strategies must align with environmental goals, social responsibility, and ethical labor practices, not just for compliance, but because stakeholders now demand it. In short, strategic sourcing transforms procurement from a cost center into a value driver, empowering organizations to be more resilient, responsible, and competitive. Now that we've discussed the concept and key elements of strategic sourcing, let's walk through the strategic sourcing process itself. The practical, step-by-step journey that organizations follow to turn sourcing strategy into action. The first step is data collection and analysis. This involves gathering detailed information about what the organization is currently buying, how much it's spending, from whom, and under what terms. The goal is to understand the existing spend landscape and identify opportunities for improvement. Next, we move into the supply market assessment. This is where we analyze the external supplier landscape. Who's out there, what they offer, how competitive the market is, and what trends or risks are emerging. It's about being fully informed before making sourcing decisions. The third step is sourcing strategy development. Based on the data and market insights, we craft a sourcing plan. This might involve consolidating suppliers, exploring global sourcing options, or focusing on innovation or sustainability. It's the strategic blueprint for how we'll approach the market. Then we execute the RFX process, which could be a request for information, RFI, request for quotation, RFQ, or request for proposal, RFP. This is where we engage suppliers formally, asking them to respond with their qualifications, pricing, and solutions. Next comes negotiation and contracting. Here, we negotiate terms and conditions, not just price, but service levels, warranties, penalties, and incentives. The goal is to create a fair, robust contract that protects both parties and aligns expectations. And finally, we reach implementation and continuous improvement. This is where the supplier relationship begins. Orders are placed, performance is tracked, and feedback loops are established to refine and enhance the partnership over time. Strategic sourcing is not a one-off project. It's an ongoing cycle of analysis, action, and improvement that creates long-term value for the organization. So now that we've covered what strategic sourcing is and how the process works, let's talk about the real-world benefits, why companies invest in it and what they gain from doing it well. The first and most obvious benefit is cost reduction. But this isn't just about negotiating lower prices. Strategic sourcing focuses on reducing the total cost of ownership, from acquisition and delivery to maintenance and disposal. By analyzing spend data, consolidating suppliers, and leveraging volume, organizations can uncover significant savings over time. It's about being smart with your purchasing power, not just being frugal. Next is risk mitigation. In today's volatile global environment, supply chain disruptions are more common than ever, whether due to geopolitical issues, natural disasters, or economic shifts. Strategic sourcing helps identify these risks early by diversifying supplier bases, building stronger contracts, and maintaining visibility into the supply market. This proactive approach can be the difference between business continuity and costly shutdowns. And finally, a powerful but often overlooked benefit: innovation and collaboration. Strategic sourcing isn't just about buying, it's about partnering. When companies work closely with key suppliers, they can co-develop new products, improve existing processes, and stay ahead of competitors. Suppliers can bring new ideas, technologies, and efficiencies to the table, if they're treated as true partners, not just vendors. In short, strategic sourcing enables organizations to cut costs, reduce risks, and unlock new opportunities for growth and innovation. It transforms procurement from a back-office function into a powerful driver of business strategy. Let's now explore a powerful and increasingly essential aspect of modern procurement: supplier collaboration and partnerships. In today's global, fast-moving, and unpredictable business environment, it's no longer enough to treat suppliers as mere vendors. Organizations that want to lead, those that want to innovate, reduce risk, and stay competitive, must move beyond transactional buying. They must invest in true partnerships with their key suppliers. So, why collaborate? What do we gain by going beyond the basic buy and sell relationship? The first and perhaps most exciting reason is innovation. When companies and suppliers work closely together, they can co-develop new products, improve processes, and even pioneer new technologies. Suppliers often bring valuable insights and expertise that wouldn't be available internally. Second, there's cost sharing on R&D. Collaborative partnerships allow both parties to share the financial burden of developing new materials, processes, or technologies. This makes innovation more affordable and less risky for both sides. That brings us to the third benefit: risk sharing. Whether it's supply chain disruptions, market volatility, or regulatory changes, collaboration allows both the buyer and supplier to anticipate and respond to risks more effectively and with a unified approach. And finally, collaboration improves agility. In times of crisis or rapid change, companies with strong supplier relationships can adapt faster, adjusting production, exploring alternatives, or finding creative solutions together. Now, let's talk about the types of collaboration you're likely to encounter. The first is operational collaboration. This focuses on day-to-day efficiency, such as coordinated logistics, shared forecasting, and inventory management. For example, companies might integrate their systems to enable real-time data sharing, helping both sides reduce lead times and avoid stockouts. The second, and more strategic type, is strategic alliances. These go deeper. They involve long-term commitments like joint product development, shared investment in new technologies, or exclusive supply agreements. A great example of this is how automakers like Toyota or BMW work with their key suppliers to co-design components years before a new model hits the market. These kinds of partnerships require trust, transparency, and aligned goals. They're not built overnight, but when done right, supplier collaboration creates a competitive edge that's very difficult for others to replicate. In summary, supplier collaboration is not just a soft skill, it's a strategic imperative. It drives innovation, shares risk, increases resilience, and ultimately, helps organizations deliver more value to their customers. So as future supply chain professionals, I encourage you to think beyond the transaction. Think relationship, think partnership. That's where real value begins. As we continue through the procurement lifecycle, an essential area we must focus on is contract management. Contract management is more than just signing a document and filing it away. It involves the end-to-end administration of contracts with vendors, from the early planning stages all the way through to monitoring performance, handling changes, and even renewing or closing the agreement. It ensures that both the buyer and supplier uphold their commitments and that the business relationship remains productive, fair, and aligned with expectations. Let's look at the 3 key stages of contract management. Stage 1 is pre-award. This is where all the groundwork is laid. It involves planning the procurement strategy, preparing and issuing RFPs or RFQs, and evaluating suppliers. The focus here is on selecting the right partner and setting clear expectations from the start. Stage 2 is the award phase. This is where the actual negotiation happens. Terms are discussed, compromises are made, and once there's agreement, the contract is formally signed. But it's critical that the contract reflects everything that was agreed to, because what's written is what governs the relationship moving forward. Stage 3 is post-award. This is where the real contract management begins. It involves monitoring supplier performance, ensuring compliance with terms, managing any changes or disputes, and eventually, deciding whether to renew, renegotiate, or close the contract. Now, let's go over the key elements of a contract that you should always pay close attention to. Scope of work. This defines exactly what the supplier is responsible for delivering. Clarity here avoids ambiguity and disputes later on. Payment terms, these outline how and when the supplier will be paid, including milestones, currency, taxes, and penalties for late payments. Delivery schedules. This includes timelines for each stage of delivery and what constitutes an on-time delivery. Quality requirements, specifications and performance standards that must be met, often tied to acceptance testing and inspection procedures. Penalty clauses. These are the consequences for non-compliance, such as late delivery or failure to meet quality benchmarks. They protect the buyer and reinforce accountability. Confidentiality and intellectual property rights, critical in industries where proprietary information is shared. These clauses ensure sensitive data is protected and clarify who owns any innovations developed during the contract. And finally, dispute resolution mechanisms. Every contract should outline how conflicts will be handled, whether through arbitration, mediation, or litigation, so that if things go wrong, there's a clear process to resolve the issue. Strong contract management ensures that the organization gets the value it expected, minimizes risk, and builds better relationships with its suppliers. It is both a legal safeguard and a strategic tool. So as you think about your role in supply chain procurement, remember, a well-managed contract is not the end of the process. It's the framework that keeps everything else working. As we approach the final piece of the procurement puzzle, let's talk about something that can make or break supplier relationships and impact the entire value chain: negotiation. Negotiation isn't just about pushing for the lowest price. In procurement, negotiation is a strategic tool that helps secure value, align expectations, and build partnerships that last. A well-conducted negotiation doesn't just create a good deal. It creates a win-win outcome, fosters long-term relationships, and helps to mitigate risk over time. Let's walk through the 5 key phases of negotiation. Phase 1 is preparation. This is where successful negotiation really begins. You need to be absolutely clear on your goals, what you want to achieve, what you're willing to compromise on, and what your deal breakers are. And most importantly, you need to know your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In other words, if this deal doesn't work out, what's your next best option? Phase 2 is discussion. This is the stage where both parties come to the table and start exchanging information. You listen, ask questions, and gather insights into what the other side values. The aim here is not to argue, but to understand. Phase 3 is the proposal. This is where you lay out your initial terms. It's the starting point for more detailed negotiation and sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. Phase 4 is bargaining. This is the heart of negotiation. Here, both sides make concessions, explore trade-offs, and work toward mutual benefit. It's where flexibility meets strategy. The key is to give ground where you can, while protecting the value of what truly matters to you. And finally, Phase 5 is closure. Once both parties are satisfied, the agreement is finalized and documented. Clear, accurate documentation at this stage is critical to avoid misunderstandings later on. In summary, great negotiation isn't about getting the upper hand. It's about crafting agreements that work well for both sides. It's about building trust, achieving alignment, and setting the foundation for a successful, enduring supplier relationship. Because in procurement, the goal isn't just a good deal today, it's sustainable value for the future. As we wrap up, let's look at the bigger picture. Procurement isn't just a back-office function, it's a strategic asset that drives cost savings, innovation, resilience, and competitive advantage. It starts with smart supplier choices. Strong supplier relationships directly impact product quality, services, and reputation. Strategic sourcing aligns purchasing with business goals, focuses on long-term value, and uncovers hidden opportunities. Collaboration is key. Treating suppliers as partners fosters innovation, better products, and stronger supply chains. And solid contracts and skilled negotiation bring structure, ensuring accountability and long-term success. Remember, procurement is about more than buying, it's about building value, partnerships, and the future of your organization. That's about it for today. If you have any question, please feel free to drop it down below. Don't forget to subscribe our channel and I will see you in the next session. Take care, bye.